Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Final Word with MattyB here on the It's a Wrap Sports Network on this beautiful, beautiful Thursday night, October the 17th, 2024. And it's great to be with you again on our semi 2 hours before midnight rendezvous as we have navigated through our first full broadcasting week. Tonight is our final show of the week, and that will mark our first ever full broadcasting week on the show, on the network. It's a milestone that we celebrated in the office today earlier, and it was a great party. I attended, so it's great. It's great to be here. It's great to be back for another night of Philadelphia sports recapping, Philadelphia sports talk in general, and some life talk as well. Tonight on the program, we got ALCS, NLCS check-ins going on. We're going to look at the drama that was the Yankees and the Guardians earlier tonight, and that the drama that is the Mets and the Dodgers as they are locked in battle right now out there in Los Angeles. We got a little bit of a Birds-Giants preview earlier tonight on the network. We did the Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn, where we cut up the Giants game, and me and Kyle both gave our predictions, scores, MVPs, as well as kind of going over the game a little bit. Please go back and check that out. We got a little bit of a flyer. We got a Flyers preview because tonight, big night here on the network. 6:30 was the Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn. We're doing the final word tonight, and then in about 3 hours from now, we're going to come back because I got to clear the ice as the Flyers finish that dreadful West Coast trip to start the season. Well, I say Western Canada trip that is now a West Coast trip because now they're in Seattle, back on U.S. soil, getting closer to Philadelphia as they will finish out their 4-game season opening Western Canadian West Coast trip against the Kraken out there in Seattle. We're going to preview that game a little bit. We got our day in Philadelphia sports history, and the NFL trade deadline creeps a little bit more closer as we're now one day less away from 5 November. So let's get things started tonight as we do always on the program, and that is your day in Philadelphia sports history. And we go back to the year 1954 for the moment in Philadelphia sports history, and it is an Eagles nugget because on this day, Eagles quarterback Adrian Burke set a franchise and NFL record by throwing 7 touchdowns in a single game in a 49-21 bloodletting of the Washington Redskins. There was the he was very, very reminiscent of the last Eagle quarterback to throw 7 touchdowns in a single game, and that was, of course, Nick Foles. Burke did not have an auspicious career. I believe that was it. That was his highlight of his career, was a 7-touchdown pass affair. Now, of course, Nick Foles one-upped him by going out and winning a Super Bowl, so you got to give Nick a little bit of a credit there. But the Eagles currently, of course, with Nick Foles tying, I think it was Peyton Manning in the 7-touchdown realm. The Eagles now have 2 players on the NFL all-time list when it comes to throwing 7 touchdowns in a single game. And on this day back in 1954, Adrian Burke, who doesn't leap out at the stat sheet of you, doesn't leap out as an all-time Eagle name, but on this day in 1954, he was, as he threw 7 touchdown passes in a single game against the Washington Redskins. So that is your day, or your day in Philadelphia sports history. Adrian Burke, it's right, the Burkster. Yeah, I never heard of him before. Throws 7 touchdowns in a single game. So congratulations, Adrian Burke. You put yourself in the NFL record books. And of course, when Nick Foles did it in 2014, joined him as an Eagle quarterback to throw 7 touchdowns in a single game. So there you have it. History was made today by the Philadelphia Eagles as they not much not much really. I mean, if you look back at the Eagles' history, there's not really that much to be excited about, right? There's a couple championships mixed there, 49 and 60, and then you got the Super Bowl. Other than that, man, it's been pretty dreadful. A lot of losing, but it's nice to see that Adrian Burke is currently in the NFL record book, along with Nick Foles, 2 Eagle quarterbacks in terms of throwing 7 touchdown passes at one game. Not many or any NFL franchises can say that. So there you go. And that segment on the program was brought to you by the great folks at It's a Wrap Sports. Don't forget, we are currently streaming from our YouTube channel that desperately needs the help to support the subscriptions. We are also streaming from my Facebook account, which we, of course, have our own Facebook account, but we are in the process of not having, we need more followers on that, so you need to go over to that one as well and follow it. And then we're also streaming off of my own personal X account. So there you have it. There's the shameless plug of the night. Please like and subscribe. It's a Wrap Sports Network. You know, as I said, coming into our final show of our first broadcasting week. And when I started, I had one subscriber, and now we've gotten up to 21. So, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and throw stones. We grew expeditiously in 1 week. We need to keep growing, and we need to grow a little bit faster. But yeah, please, if you could, it doesn't cost anything. All you gotta do is click the little bell, click the little subscribe box, and you'd be helping me out a bunch. So let's move on into the program tonight. ALCS, NLCS, both back in action on this Thursday night as the Yankees were looking to take a 3-0 stranglehold lead over the Guardians. The game went down a little bit earlier, and it was not looking good if you were a Guardian fan. Well, it was looking good a little bit. Yankees got up to a 1-0 lead, but the Guardians came back in the third inning, scoring 2 to go up 2-1. Then they were up 3-1 until the Yankees in the 8th inning put 3 on the board to make it 4-3. And then put on an additional run in the 9th inning to seemingly go up 5-3 and really smelling the victory. But the Guardians in the bottom of the 9th, it does not get any better than that. Bottom of the 9th, Noel would homer a 2-run shot to tie it up at 5. And then David Fry walks it off, man, in the bottom of the 10th inning. 7-5 Guardians as they, instead of going down, they were a cat's whisper away from going down 3-0. Now they have new life as they trail the Yankees 2-1 in the series. And that is playoff baseball at its best. The Guardians out-hit the Yankees in this game 11-6. And just obviously what got the Yankees to where they needed to be was the bats again. You know, we've talked about this all season long when it comes to the Phillies, about all they do is hit home runs, and the team is programmed to only hit home runs. But in the biggest of moments, on the biggest of stage, on the brightest of spotlights, the Phillies came up very short. Well, tonight, Stanton and Judge went back-to-back in this game. Chisholm chipped in with a homer. No, Stanton and Judge, actually, where is that? I'm looking at like 3. Yeah, Stanton and Judge went back-to-back in this game. That is how superstars rise to the moment in playoffs. But for the Guardians, they were able to chip away, and then had their own drama, both in the 9th and then in the 10th, as they avoided going down 3-0 tonight and won to make it now 2-1. Game 4 is tomorrow in Cleveland. So you got to be excited if you're a Guardian fan. New life springs eternal in Cleveland. As far as your National League NLCS, they're now gone to the 6th inning. It is 5-2 Dodgers over the Mets as Ohtani. Again, it's the night of the stars. Ohtani goes deep for the Mets, or for the Dodgers. He has an RBI. He's 1 for 3. Mark Vientos, who's having an amazing postseason. This guy was in AAA 5 months ago, and he has had an amazing postseason. So far this postseason, Vientos 10 at-bats, 10 games, 41 at-bats, 6 runs, 15 hits, 2 doubles, 3 homers, and 11 RBIs. Again, this is a guy who's getting paid nowhere near the amount of money that Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber are getting paid, or Trey Turner, List goes on and on for the Phillies, but he's just tearing the cover off the ball. Now, is this sustainable? Is this the Mark Vientos they're going to see next year? Who knows? Brett Baty was supposed to be the new slice or the new flavor at third base for the Mets. He hasn't really worked out. That's why Vientos is there, because he was sent down in favor of Mark Vientos way earlier this season, and it obviously was the right move, as he has had a great postseason. But right now in Game 3, with that series tied up at 1, it is 5-2 Dodgers over the Mets going into the top of the 6th inning. So Mets better get it going here, or they could find themselves in a very, very vicarious spot, down 2-1 to the Dodgers. On the mound tonight for the Dodgers is Yamamoto, much maligned, phenom out of Italy, out of Japan, who's seemingly signed with the Dodgers only because, he was coveted. Phillies put a lot of money on the table to get him. He balked at that so he could play in Los Angeles, allegedly to be closer to Japan and also obviously closer to Ohtani. Really didn't follow much of his season. He had some injury problems this year. Did appear in 18 games. He started all 18 of those. Was 7-2. Had an ERA of 3. Only pitched 99 innings though. Struck out 105 and walked 22, and that was his regular season numbers. So far in the postseason, he's appeared. He started 2 games. He's 1-0 with 8 innings pitched, 3 strikeouts, 3 walks, and an ERA around 5.63. So not very effective in his time in the postseason, but I do remember that was a huge story that everybody was following last hot stove season, as everyone was trying to keep an eye on Yamamoto and see where he might end up. Phillies, again, as I said, much publicized, offered him a lot more money, but he took the Dodger money instead so he could be closer to both Japan and Ohtani. And obviously the right decision, as he's in the NLCS. The Phillies aren't, so got to give the man credit where credit's due. But right now, 5-2 Dodgers over the Mets as they enter play in the 6th. There's your ALCS, NLCS check-ins as these series are rolling through. I've said this multiple times, and I'll continue to say it multiple times. I don't care if the Dodgers advance. I don't care if the Yankees advance. I do not want to see. And I don't care if the Mets advance. But then the Guardians have to advance, because under no circumstances do I want to endure a Subway Series, World Series. It would make me physically ill every day to have to listen to all that New York crap back and forth. So one or the other cannot move on. I don't care who. I really don't. At the end of the day, I obviously would prefer not to see the Mets make it. But honestly, at this point, I don't care who doesn't make it. Just somebody don't. So I do not want a Subway Series. So there's your check-in with baseball. And we're running out of time with baseball. Soon we won't be checking in with baseball. We'll be checking in on the hot stove. And it's necessary evil, I guess, to get to the next season. But definitely depressing. Very depressing. Very, very depressing. But there you have your baseball check-in. As I mentioned, the Flyers are in action. Actually, as I speak, they're on right to my right here. It is early on, 16 minutes remaining in the first period. Nothing between the Flyers and the Kraken. Flyers are looking to end this road trip on a very positive note. It's a lot. And I've said it before. It's a lot to have to start the season out on a West Coast trip. It's a lot to start the season out going into Western Canada and then finishing up in Seattle, and then before even playing a game at home. And the fact that the Flyers, when they started their season, were literally the last team to start the season last Friday night. And it's been a gruel. They had a back-to-back mixed in there. They've had some things they've had to deal with. Nick Seeler starting the season on the IL. But there's been some very positive signs coming out of the coming out into this West Coast trip. Obviously, the play of MattyB Michkov highlights that. Jet Lachenko has been a pleasant surprise as he's trying to find his way onto a more permanent role in this team. And by the way, the Flyers just scored. Scott Laughton with a pretty little wraparound to make it 1-0 Flyers. So that's very positive. Again, Flyers, some tenacity out the blue line. Hathaway, nice little play to keep the puck in. Dumps it in. Kind of rattles around. And Laughton's able to pick it up behind and just wrap it in. That's a pretty goal. And again, that's indicative of the hard work that the Flyers have had throughout this little road trip. I've seen a different kind of thing from the Flyers this season. Early on, I give you that, but very tenacious, very kind of continuing on what they started last season, but have actually kind of seemed to have stepped it up a little bit. So 1-0 now, Flyers over the Kraken early on here in the first period. Lawton with his first goal of the year, so that's good to see. As far as this game, we can go back in time a little bit and do a quick little preview. Some of the Flyers are going with Fedotov tonight as he's going to get to start. And then, I thought this kind of threw a little bit. I thought maybe they would go Urson here. Obviously, they want to try to keep Urson probably fresh for Saturday. It could have went either way. But Fedotov gets to start for the Flyers tonight. So that clears the way for Urson to definitely start the home opener on Saturday against Vancouver. Your healthy scratches for the Flyers tonight were Nick Deloria and was it Noah Cates? As Nick Deloria, Noah Cates, and Emil Andre were your healthy scratches for the Flyers. So Lechenko back in the lineup tonight. That's one less game now. The Flyers have to make a decision on him, as well as Eric Johnson getting the start. Flyers only going with 6 defensemen tonight, by the way. 6 defensemen. 12 forwards, and the 2 goalies. So there you have your Flyers preview. And it's not Dave Hacksaw. It's Dan Bilesma. Don't forget, Hacksaw got fired at the end of last year. So we have it, it's not one of those games, of course. It's one of the games a lot of Flyers fans they circle on their calendar because it's an opportunity to stick it again to Dave Hacksaw. But he's no longer the head coach in Seattle as they've moved on from him. So again, 1-0 Flyers now, coming up on the midway point of the first period. And don't forget, following the game, I'll be back for a full recap of tonight's action as the Clear the Ice show will roll on. And then on Saturday night, we got you again as the Flyers will open the season at home against Vancouver. Our boy Sal G back on the call as Sal is a permanent part of Clear the Ice this year. You're going to see Sal more. Again, I've told you this before when I do the Fightins final, when it comes to these late night 10 o'clock starts, I take most of them from the guys because I know a lot of these guys have day jobs. I do have a day job, sort of, and I can maneuver around a little bit, but I don't like to do that to the guys. So Sal worked when he could over the weekend for me, doing one of the games. And now that we're moving back into a more normal start time of games at 7 o'clock, and I believe the next time the Flyers will play a 10 o'clock game is sometime in was it February or March? So, well, no, actually, I think they'll play. It's right around Christmas. Yeah, so they got a little break when they head back out for their California trip, but that'll be different. It's the holidays. So, obviously I'm going to take a lot off Sal's plate there, but Sal will start being your regular. So you'll be seeing him more regularly on Clear the Ice starting on Saturday when the Flyers open up at home. So make sure you're here for the Clear the Ice program for tonight and every other Flyers game going forward into this season, as it's a great time of the year as we've begun. I'm not going to go NHL scores right now. I'll wait to do those at the end of the night when I come back for the post-game show. We'll go over the scores at that time, so I want to stay away from the scores. We do have some and again earlier tonight I talked in depth at the on the Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn. We went over the Eagles game, and the theme of what I took from that show with Kyle was, whereas last week it was the majority of Eagle fans were locked in 100%. This is a win. There's no way heaven and earth could assuage the Eagles any other way. The football gods would not do that to the Birds. They would not curse the Eagles with a loss. Put this in the bank. We're going to win it. It's quite the opposite this weekend. Everyone wants to say the Giants are a dumpster fire. Everyone wants to say the Giants stink and Dan Jones is all that. And you're right. But what I think is happening now is a lot more fans are starting to realize what, of course, I've known all along, that the Eagles are not that far away from the New York Giants. They're not that far away from I'm not going to say Carolina because that's Cleveland Brown territory, but they're not that far away from a team like that. They are kind of caught in between two worlds, if you ask me. And that means that they're susceptible to losing every week, no matter who they play, to include when they play the Carolina Panthers a little bit later on the season. So to sit here and say that the Eagles are above all this and how dare you try to think that the Eagles would beat the Giants, to me, and obviously now to a lot of other people, is becoming more and more of a reality, because the consensus that I'm getting and the consensus that I got from the show earlier with Kyle was this is going to be hairy. This is not going to be a cakewalk. Based on the evidence of what the Eagles have been all season, based on the drama surrounding Nick Sirianni and what version of that we're going to get Sunday, there's no guarantee here, and there shouldn't be a guarantee. There's no team in this league right now that you could say, to include the Cleveland Browns, because I didn't think it was a lockdown win last week. I did think there was still a chance they could lose, and they almost did. So heading into this week, and then heading in against Cincinnati, and then even heading in against Jacksonville, you can't sit here and say without a shadow of a doubt that Eagles are going to win. You just can't, because they're not that kind of team. And the evidence of the field or the evidence on the field is in stark contrast to what a lot of Eagle fans thought this team was going to be at the start of the season. So the consensus that I took from the show earlier, and again, please go back and take a look at it. It's fun. I enjoy doing those with Kyle every week. But the consensus was that it's going to be another one of those dirty games. It's going to be another one of those games where the Eagles shoot themselves in the foot and the Giants struggle on offense because Dan Jones stinks. And it could come down to the final possession. And we talked about this on the show. You're looking at a loss for the Eagles is not only an overall loss that would drop them to 3-3. It's a divisional loss that puts them at 0-1. And it's a conference loss that comes back and bites you in the butt come seeding time. And if the Eagles are trying to get a wild card, or even if they're trying to win their division, obviously it counts. So you're looking at a 3-game swing in the standings for the Eagles starting this week. Giants are in the same boat. Giants enter the game 2-4. Really can't afford to go 2-5 if they want to be considered in this thing as a playoff team. They can't go 2-5. They also have a 3-game swing head-to-head, conference and division, if they're trying to get into the playoffs, because right now, feasibly speaking, the Eagles are going to be a team, in my opinion, that a lot of other teams are chasing for a wild card this year. So this game has lasting implications as we move deeper into the season. And we're no longer into that September extended preseason excuse period, right? We can't use that anymore. It's funny how we used that all throughout September, and then it kind of faded away in October. The play didn't get any better, but we stopped using that as an excuse. So very important game on Sunday for the Eagles. They should not overlook it. If they come in with the arrogance that they are a better team based purely on the fact that they're the Eagles, then they're going to lose. They got to go in there and play this game like literally their lives depended upon it. And earlier on the show, Kyle Quinn pointed out that Landon Dickerson, who appeared on WIP at some point this week, and I should go back and listen to the interview myself, but he pointed out that Landon Dickerson intimated that the first 15 scripted plays may not necessarily be directed at trying to exploit the opponent's weaknesses at that time. They are what Kyle said, that Landon said, were considered to be feeler plays, and that the team is trying to see what they could potentially run later on in the game. Now, if that is the truth, and if that's the 15 scripted plays, if that's the plays that the Eagles are sitting down week after week, drawing up to go out and run not to score points, especially, and a team that hasn't scored any first quarter points this season, a team that's averaging 8.2 first half points, if they're going out and not trying to run the best 15 possible plays that they can in order to spark their offense, in order to get points early, in order to build some confidence, but if they're actually going out there running plays that are feeler plays and plays that could reveal weaknesses later on in the game instead of right now, then that's probably one of the more arrogant, crazy things I've ever heard a 3-2 football team who lacks an offensive identity and a defensive identity and has a buffoon as a head coach is possibly doing. So I hope that's not what they're doing. And if they have done it in the past, I hope Nick Sirianni sees the handwriting on the wall this week, sees the importance of going out there on Sunday amidst all this other stuff that he has endured over the week, amidst all the other stuff that this team has endured, coming out of a win against the Cleveland Browns. But I hope he comes out and actually runs 15 of his greatest plays, or Kellen Moore runs 15 of his greatest plays, or a combination between Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni. They run the 15 greatest plays they can, because it is very important, as it is every week. But more so this week, more so as these weeks continue to go on and on and on when they don't score any first quarter points. This week is now the new important week that they go out there and put some points up on the board early. I said it on the Birds Blast. It's the quintessential pregame show, we call it. I said that I want to see an old-fashioned 9-minute opening quarter drive, ending in a 1-yard touchdown run by Saquon Barkley. Suck all the energy out. Take most of the time of the first quarter. Pin the Giants back already. And, of course, ultimately give the Eagles offensive confidence. So I hope to hell that is not true. And if it is true, I hope that's not what they do this weekend. So we're going to see on Sunday at 1 o'clock, Eagles-Giants at MetLife Stadium. We'll be back Sunday night with the Final Word program. And, of course, it'll be driven heavily around Eagle reaction and a pseudo post-game show. The other thing that was brought up in the show today with Kyle was something that I had actually been thinking about for the last couple weeks that is maybe coming out a little bit more now, especially now that we know Nick Sirianni is more involved in the offensive play calling than he's was supposed to be. The fact that potentially Jalen Hurts, and don't forget, Jalen Hurts did comment this over the summer, said it's 95% new, and he's still trying to figure out some things. It's very new. Is Nick Sirianni still calling plays because, in part, that Jalen Hurts is having a hard time, or Jalen Hurts has not been able to figure out Kellen Moore's new offense? Is that a possibility? And if it is a possibility, and I told Kyle this earlier, that has got to be the worst case scenario when it comes to the quarterback struggles and this team's offensive struggles. Because if the Eagles are absolutely in a situation where they cannot trust their quarterback to learn a new offense, their $255 million quarterback or something, whatever it is, he gets paid $1.6 million per game. But if they can't trust a guy like that to learn a new offense, what do we do? I mean, do you admit that you have the wrong quarterback and now we try to unload him? Or do you try to find somebody, and maybe you should have done this before you brought in Kellen Moore. You try to find somebody whose offensive style, whose offensive game plan suits the skills of your quarterback. Because if they can't teach him the offense, and if he is struggling with learning the concepts of Kellen Moore's offense, where are we going this season? And the Eagles will have to fire yet another offensive coordinator. And in long term, and in prosperity's sake. I hope that's not the case. I hope it's just a case of Nick Sirianni's ego getting in the way of stepping down and not being the CEO of the team, but still wanting to actually be the head coach, which, in a way, I give Nick a lot of credit. He's not going gently into the good night. He's being the head coach. With the alternative being that Jalen Hurts is not understanding how to run Kellen Moore's offense, if that's the alternative to this situation, I'd much rather it be the fact that Jalen Hurts or that Nick Sirianni is just an egomaniac and can't let go. Because that's an easy fix. We fire Nick, you make Kellen Moore the head coach, and then we let things happen from there. But if it's the other side, if it's the latter, if it's the fact that Jalen Hurts can't figure out the schemes and the concepts of Kellen Moore's offense, brother, we got a problem. And we got a problem that's not going to be fixed with Kellen Moore being here. And what do? Do you move on from the quarterback or do you move on from the coordinator? Obviously, the answer would be moving on from the coordinator. Optically, that would look ridiculous. So we go through another offensive coordinator. But what do you do there? And once again, whose responsibility is this? Who created this mess? Who hired Kellen Moore without potentially checking to see if Jalen Hurts could figure out and run a Kellen Moore offense? Because there's no way with the talent that's on this football team offensively. And yes, I've gone on record by saying that there is talent on this team. There's talent on the offensive side of this ball. But there's no way you can go into a season with the talent they have offensively and be averaging 8.2 first half points and 13.6 second half points. There's just, I'm having a hard time putting my head around that this team is being held in check because of the play of the quarterback. And what I mean by play of the quarterback, by the types of plays that are being called for him. So I'm gravitating more towards the Kellen Moore theory that they're trying to protect Jalen Hurts. They're trying to give him an offense where he can at least function in. It might not be the best offense or to put the team in the best position to make plays, but it's the best offense they could try to use with Jalen Hurts as the quarterback to try to move the football and try to rely solely on the offensive skill set of the offense. But it's been very frustrating, and I'm sure it'll come out, and I'm sure eventually we'll all be told, hey, this was what the reasons was, and yada, 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 and God forbid, here we go down another slippery slope. But yeah, interesting stuff today by Kyle. He had me thinking, first on the whole situation with the Landon Dickerson comment about the fact that the Eagles are not necessarily running 15 scripted plays in order to score or get points, but they're running 15 scripted plays or feeler plays to kind of see what kind of opportunities or what kind of things might be there for them later in this game. Amazing. And then, of course, the Jalen Hurts situation where, is it Jalen Hurts? Is it Kellen Moore? Or is it the fact that Jalen Hurts can't learn Kellen Moore's offense, and that is why Nick Sirianni has got a hand in calling the offense? Can't make this stuff up, man. This is supposed to be a Super Bowl contending team, and you can't not make this stuff up. And I hope they wise up, man. And I'm praying for the day. I pray for the day every single day when I put head to pillow at night. Please, Lord, let this be the last day of Howie Roseman. Please, Lord, before this day is through, let Howie Roseman be fired and his head coach. Please, Lord. Your servant MattyB has suffered enough. When is it going to be my time, Lord? And more specifically and more importantly, when is it going to be the Philadelphia Eagles time? So, Sunday at 1 o'clock, Eagles-Giants, live from MetLife Stadium. And then next Sunday at 4:25, oh, no, not so fast. Not at 4:25, but at 1 o'clock from, what do they call the stadium out there? I know what they call the baseball stadium. It's not Riverfront anymore. But anyway, Paul Brown Stadium, wherever the Bengals play, the Eagles will battle the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati next Sunday at their new start time of 1 p.m. And of course, originally this game was scheduled to be played at 4:30. The NFL decided to flex the Eagles out of that 4:30 time slot and move the Washington Commanders and Chicago Bears into the 4:30 time slot, sending a message, I think, to the Eagles, Browns, and the Eagles, Bengals, and the National Football League that Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, or where's that? And that Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts are yesterday's newspapers. And that we would much rather see a battle between the top two picks in the draft than a battle between two quarterbacks that have various problems or numerous problems with both their own game and their team game. So Kyle made a point to say, how is this affecting Jeff Lurie? And then I'm sure he's not happy about it. I made the counterpoint that you're right, because anytime that you're in a national slot late game, which is not too many late games during the week anyway. So you're one of maybe 3 or 4 games, and then you're probably you are the game of the week. And now you go from that slot to the 1 p.m. slot with most of the other games and get kind of lost in the sauce. Your product is not getting out there. Your product is not on the national stage. Your product is not getting the spotlight. And that hurts Jeff Lurie where he doesn't want to be hurt the most, and that's in his pockets. So big news. I think it's a lot bigger news, and it'll probably gain traction as we get ready for the Bengal game. But I think it's huge news. And I think it's a sign from the NFL to the Eagles, the Bengals, and the league that says, hey, we got to move on to the next darlings of the league. And right now it's not Joe and Jalen, it's Caleb and Jaden. So interesting situation indeed that we'll keep an eye on next week, and I'm sure of it. NFL trade deadline is quickly approaching. Tuesday, November 5th is the trade deadline. Is that election day? Is that election day? I think it is. Wow. Interesting day to have the trade deadline this year, but I want to say it's election day. Tuesday, November 5th is the trade deadline. What does Howie Roseman do? There's stories floating around the internet that he might go after a wide receiver 3. If he does, I mean, what are we doing here? Didn't he already do that? And he gave up prime draft capital to get the wide receiver 3 in Johanna Dotson, who obviously has not worked out to this point. Why he hasn't worked out? Is it quarterback? Is it scheme? Is it player ability? All the above, I don't know. But yes, it hasn't really worked out. He's not really much of a factor. Even as a WR3, he's not much of a factor. And again, I said it when the Eagles actually pull off the trade initially. Why would the Commanders in their right mind send him to a division rival at all? I don't care if it was for a 3rd-round pick, 2nd-round pick, or 1st-round pick. Why would you do business with a divisional rival? It just makes no sense. And, of course, the homers didn't see that. All they saw was Howie's greatness and this great trade guru, this great drafting, this great personnel guy. Didn't look past the smoke and the mirrors. And now we got a potential Jalen Reagor on our hands who doesn't seem to be able to get into the offense at all, or very sporadically get into the offense. And I believe I heard some bodacious claims earlier in the offseason that said that, Dotson was going to get 70 receptions, 1,000 yards, and 8 touchdowns, which, unless he severely turns it on over the next couple weeks, those numbers are not going to be anywhere approachable. So, once again, the homers not seeing past the reality. No, they're just seeing what they want to see. And, of course, they see the wrong things. But November 5th trade deadline is coming. Devontae Adams moved to the Jets. Mari Cooper moved to the Bills. Austin Eckler moved to the... Where did Eckler go? Is he with the Rams? No, he's not with the Rams. Eckler was moved. So some big names have already moved. What happens with Hassan Reddick? What happens with potential in DeAndre Hopkins? He could be on his on a way on his. He could be on the move. Cooper Kupp, depending on where the Rams kind of either leverage out or don't leverage out this season. Cooper Kupp could be on his way as well. So there's some big names floating around out there that could be on the move. And then most importantly, what do the Eagles do? Does Howie address the defense? Does he try to bring in another edge rusher? Try to bring in somebody for the middle? Does he try to, or up front, does he try to bring in a linebacker? There's a few of them floating around out there. We went over them last night on the show, on the Final Word. So does Howie attempt to make a move for these guys to try to, sew up the defense? I don't necessarily think an offensive piece should be in play. The Eagles on paper have one of the best offenses in all of football. Why are we going after another offensive piece? We don't have a good defense. We've always have not had a good defense. So it has to be, in my opinion, if the Flyers do decide to go out at the trade deadline, which I expect them to be players in, but are they sellers? Maybe the Eagles are sellers in the trade deadline. They only have 7 draft picks heading into this year's draft, the 2025 draft. They'll pick up more through draft compensation because of losing free agents and whatever, but they only have 7 picks heading into this year's draft. And they have a first, a second, a third, and 3/5. That's it. That is all they have. A first, second, third, fourth, and 3/5. Not what you would call kind of consistent across the board. Only 1 first-round pick this year. Only 1 second-round pick this year. So does Howie potentially sell? Could that be in the cards for the Eagles? I mean, a lot of the stuff's going to obviously work itself out, but definitely interesting coming up. November 5th is the trade deadline. Where do the Eagles come out on this? What other big-time NFL stars get moved? And how does the NFL landscape look after it? And does Howie Roseman, does he buy or does he sell? I don't know what he does. It could be either way. The Eagles heading into November 5th could be what? It could be 3-5. Does that change things? Does Howie punt the season at that point? It could be a very interesting trade deadline. And again, the landscape has not fully made itself known, but we'll wait and see as the Eagles get closer and the rest of the league gets closer of what players are on the go and what players are staying home. But so that's definitely trending right now in the NFL. And of course, what the Eagles are going to do with it. Scoring update from Seattle. We're getting to the end of the first period. Is now 2-1 Flyers as Scott Lawton with his second goal of the game and of the season about a minute ago. But the Flyers back up on top. Seattle had tied it. Flyers are back up now 2-1 as they're getting ready to head into the first intermission in Seattle. And don't forget again, I'm going to remind you that right after the game, and I said this the other night, and I'm going to say it again, God willing, it's right at 1 a.m. or before. Don't want another overtime game. Don't want a shootout. Get this thing over with so I can come on here, deliver the post game, and put to bed this craziness of a West Coast trip to start the season. And then on Saturday night, we'll be back for the Clear the Ice program again as Flyers will open up their home schedule against Vancouver. 7 o'clock start time at Wells Fargo. So there you have the night in there you have the that's what we got or here's what we got portion of the show. And again, as I mentioned, we are thrilled that we're coming to the end of our first full broadcasting week. We're working a lot of bugs out. We're building a brand here. We're we're centering on this brand. We're building it. It's going to take time, but I really need some help out there. This is going to catch fire. There are some things in the works for this network. Brewing with some people that I've been in contact with. Again, as I said, Sal is going to be part of the Clear the Ice going forward, and there might be some more news regarding Sal as well coming in the near future. The Fightins Final will be back on this program next season. We are going to do a Fightins Final recap of the 2024 season here. Probably, as I mentioned, right after the World Series. And hopefully, we'll be able to kind of, as I said, put a cherry on top of the Philly season. And it's my hope that I can get all the Fightins Final crew of 2024 together one last time and put a proper end to the season. Again, it ended a weird way, and I'm not going to sit. We've already discussed why, and I'm not going to go back down that road. But it ended a weird way. But that doesn't mean we can't try to come together for one more show and kind of put a proper end to the Fightins final. Little update in the NLCS. It is now 7-2 Dodgers as they're heading to the top of the 7th in LA. Not looking good for the Mets, who are trying to not fall down 2-1. So 7-2 Dodgers. They're moving to the 7th inning now, as the Mets ain't looking good for the Mets. Again, I'm not saying I'm mad about it. Not at all. So what we got here on the show tonight, we had an ALCS, NLCS check-in. Drama in Cleveland as the Guardians battle back and win it in a walk-off fashion in extra innings. 2-1 Yankees series lead. Dodgers and Mets are battling right now in LA. Dodgers are up 7-2 in the 7th inning as they look to try to take a 2-1 lead in the series. We talked about the Birds-Giants a little bit. Of course, earlier tonight was the Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn. We revealed some interesting facts about the Eagles and about how they could be approaching these games. I revealed my pick of the week, which, of course, I think the Eagles will win 27-26, which, of course, means it could go either way, but I'm going with the Eagles by 1. My player of the game will be Devontae Smith. We gave a little bit of a Flyers preview, not really much. We talked about the wears and tears of the 4-game road trip. And we also gave some live look-ins for the Flyers game. It's 2-1 in the first intermission. We talked today in Philadelphia sports as Adrian Burke became the first Eagle quarterback and I believe the first NFL quarterback to throw for 7. No, he tied somebody. So there was one other person at that time who had done it. But he tied the NFL record in 1954 for throwing 7 touchdowns in one game. And, of course, just, 64, 74, 84, 94, 60 years later, Nick Foles would join that list as well, as now the Eagles have 2 quarterbacks on the 7 touchdowns in one game NFL list. And then we talked a little bit about the NFL trade deadline, some of the players that could be potentially on the move, kind of building off of what we discussed last night, and what the Eagles might do, and what Howie could possibly do, and what kind of capital he could possibly have heading into this year's trade deadline. And we talked a lot. So that is going to do me for the week. I appreciate your attention. I appreciate you tuning in. Again, this is the It's the Wrap Sports Network, airing on our YouTube channel, my Facebook, and my X. Please like and subscribe on all platforms, especially here on YouTube, as we look to grow this network. I am looking forward to continuing to build this. We build in flight, but we're going to get it to where it needs to be. I promise. If there's one person that can hammer this thing through, if there's one person out there that's not going to let this thing die, and that's me, and I promise that I'm not. And I'm looking forward to talking to you guys. I'll see you guys in a little bit, about 2 hours from now, when I'll be back for the Clear the Ice program. But as far as this show goes with the final word of MattyB, we will see you again on Sunday night as we will be talking Eagles, Giants, hopefully an Eagles win, recapping the Flyers action over the weekend, and whatever else might have grabbed our Philadelphia sports fancy. Until we talk again on Sunday night, guys, have a great rest of your night. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk again on Sunday.